Welcome, and thanks for visiting the American Atheist website. I'm Ellen Johnson, President of American Atheists. A recent investigation by the Pentagon confirmed what many of us already know, that there is growing proselytization and targeting of our armed forces by religious zealots. And there are strong indications that it reaches into the highest ranks of our military. Spurred on by a request from the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, investigators found disturbing evidence that the Pentagon brass has been routinely violating not only their own rules, but the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. One example was a shipment of so-called freedom packages to troops in Iraq. These packages had nothing to do with freedom, per se. They were all about promoting authoritarian Christian evangelicalism. Inside was a Bible, along with religious pamphlets in Arabic and English, and a CD of the Christian apocalyptic video game called Left Behind: Eternal Forces. Mirroring the fanaticism of Allah's holy warriors, the characters in the video game are soldiers for Christ who roam the streets of New York City looking for heretics to kill. These freedom packages are part of an effort called Operation Straight Up, and the purpose is to flood military bases with these religious packages. The leader of the group is a former kickboxer named Jonathan Spinks, who is an official member of the U.S. Department of Defense program known as America Supports You. According to the Los Angeles Times, Operation Straight Up has been staging Christian-themed shows at military bases, and they have planned an entertainment tour for our troops in Iraq called the Military Crusade. Now, what genius thinks that having our government sponsor anything called a crusade is the right way to go about winning the hearts and minds of nearly 1.2 billion Muslims around the planet? And there are more efforts underway to target our military with religion. Consider the recent scandal involving a group known as Christian Embassy, which boasts of its intent to target military personnel, people working on Capitol Hill, elected officials, and anyone else that can get into their theo-political crosshairs. This organization was founded by the late Bill Bright, who also started Campus Crusade for Christ. When he announced that Christian Embassy was trying to recruit government officials, even the late Billy Graham backed off from endorsing them. But the Defense Department actually permitted a film crew from the organization to freely roam the Pentagon while making a promotional video for it. Christian Embassy has also organized regular prayer meetings inside the Pentagon, and when investigators asked a U.S. Air Force official what this was all about, he said that the organization was a quasi-federal entity. How does this affect the war against Islamic fanaticism? Well, a leading newspaper in Turkey recently published an embarrassing expose on Air Force Major General Peter Sutton, who happens to be a top liaison with that country's military and who was one of the stars in the Christian Embassy video filmed inside the Pentagon. The paper rightly characterized Christian Embassy as a radical fundamentalist sect. According to the LA Times, the Turkish military has already expressed alarm at the influence of fundamentalist Christian groups inside the U.S. defense establishment. There are other cases, too, like the scandal at the U.S. Air Force Academy where Christian proselytizing by Air Force officials was out of control. And in early 2006, under pressure from evangelical Christian groups, the Air Force eased its regulations concerning religious proselytizing. Military chaplains are no longer required to offer non-sectarian prayers. All military personnel can now be subject to compulsory religious rituals praising Jesus and promoting Christianity. We have examples of U.S. military officials who talk more like preachers than ground commanders. Take the case of Army Lieutenant General William Boykin, the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, who was the man in charge of hunting down Osama bin Laden. He's been wearing his military uniform on the lecture circuit where he tells Christian fundamentalist church congregations that America is in a spiritual battle. Boykin even claims that Satan is working against the United States, and this is a quote, "He wants to destroy us as a Christian army." What makes this story particularly relevant, though, is the post-9/11 climate that we are in. We liberated Afghanistan from the Taliban, which is a despotic, theocratic regime. And whatever you may think of our invasion of Iraq, know this: we lose support if we are perceived as being on a religious crusade. It's up to the people of Afghanistan, Iraq, and everywhere else for that matter, to decide for themselves what, if any, religion they want to practice, or if they don't want any religion. And if we want to promote freedom around the world, we need to stop and avoid religious proselytizing. A U.S. Army survey found that 80% of military personnel polled said that they believed in a God and that they had a specific religious preference. So that means 20% of the men and women wearing the uniform in America today are not religious. Almost as many Americans in the general population are not religious. And these non-religious Americans are tired of having to deal with religious proselytizing in the military, when they go to school, to work, or when they're incarcerated. The religious are desperately trying to recruit and throw their weight around wherever they can because they're losing control of the country. People are not attending church in any significant numbers, and so they are going after people where they have a captive audience, like the military, the public schools, the workplace, and the prisons. But atheists and others are getting fed up with this constant religious haranguing. People don't want to have to deal with people's religious beliefs and annoying proselytizing when they go to work, or to school, or when they are serving their country in the military. Think about it. What if a representative from Toyota showed up at your place of work and constantly asked you why you didn't buy their cars, why you haven't tried their cars, and warned you what happens to those who choose to ignore the truth about their cars? Imagine this Toyota salesperson talking about you to other people in your place of business because you drive another car, or you choose not to drive at all. Then imagine if this happened to your child in school every day. What if they asked your child to read about Toyota cars, gave your child a book about Toyota cars, and even had them sing the praises of Toyota cars in school? What if you are serving your country and your government requires you to attend ceremonies with acknowledgments to Toyota? What if they made a pronouncement before the ceremony in which they state that we are all grateful to Toyota? Then imagine that our government is behind all of this, and so is your teacher, principal, employer, supervisor, etc. You think this is ridiculous? It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because this is exactly what is happening in our schools, workplaces, prisons, and military. What the religious are doing is exactly the same thing as if Toyota or any other company was aggressively marketing to you when you go to school or to work. Believe me, no one is more patient than the atheist, but that's a lot of patience to lose. If our courts don't do a better job of upholding the Establishment Clause to the United States Constitution, if employers don't start guarding against religious harassment in the workplace, and if our school administrators don't do a better job of keeping people who don't have an educational purpose away from our kids in school, then I guarantee you that the people are going to take matters into their own hands. Lawsuits are being filed in every one of these areas, and American Atheists is working on some of them. And even if we lose some of them, the lawsuits won't stop because religious extremists don't behave appropriately on their own. They have to be forced to behave appropriately and to follow the law. Now you know. You can learn more by exploring our website. Click on the link buttons at the left for all sorts of information about atheism and American Atheists. Visit our shopping section for our many books and products. And if you agree with what we have to say, we'd like you to join us. Members receive our magazine, American Atheists, and many other benefits and privileges. So thanks again for visiting. I'm Ellen Johnson.